The story begins by introducing us to a beautiful waifu who was just waking up because of our protagonist named Wang, who did so because the company event had already started. And as the cute girl was really being very affectionate, he immediately pushes her away and asks her to behave because he has a girlfriend, and besides the celebration banquet. After a while, we see that they are going to recognize the hard work of the programmer who made a project at the company successful, and the presenter before everyone asks them to give a big applause to Mr. Lee. And we see that the waifu ends up getting angry because she did all the work. Our protagonist says to forget it because, as Alice the leader will take all the credit. He also says, noticing that his girlfriend had also woken up, and hears Lily mentioning to everyone present that they will get married very soon. And we see that our protagonist, shocked by her words, runs quickly to where they are and asks how she could do that without even telling him that they had broken up, and asks her to explain why she did it. The girl, who is a terrible person, tells him how he can compare himself to Mr. Lee, while he yells that she doesn't know he did all the work. Furious at such disrespect, he ends up pushing the stage, and because of that, the protagonist loses consciousness. But anyway, he hears a lot of hurtful comments being said about him, but suddenly he is saved by a beautiful waifu who turns out to be a goddess who gives him the power of a system and grants him the title of National Maria. And as a very nice person, she tells him not to worry anymore, that from now on he will no longer be unhappy and will live a great life. And quickly she ends up expelling him from the place so that he can start the show. And we see that our protagonist doesn't understand anything about what just happened, and suddenly a lot of girls are madly in love with him. The protagonist, not understanding any of what was happening, listens to the explanation that what happens is that the system gave him a title that makes him very handsome. He also wonders why he is now so handsome and gets angry with himself because he left a hunk like him for a toad, and runs towards the protagonist and begs him not to leave her and yells to everyone that Lisa took advantage of her subordinate's credit and also embezzled public funds. The girls who were crazy about the protagonist, angry, demand that they fire that dog Lee, who heard all this, whispers to her what she is doing, that she forgot she is his accomplice. She, who was mesmerized by the protagonist's beauty, says that from that moment on she is reformed. The guy couldn't believe what was happening when suddenly a beautiful waifu who was the company's president arrived and shouted for them to shut up. He tries to explain to her that it's a misunderstanding, but it's useless because she, very furious, chases her and tells her to go and firmly resign with her fiancé and leave immediately. Our protagonist, who didn't understand a thing about what had just happened, the waifu noticed his presence and was mesmerized when she approached and told him that she hadn't noticed he had such a handsome job. Even though she noticed that the president was flirting with him, she begs him to get back together. But Tito 1, as a self-respecting alpha male, tells her to get lost. Don, who saw such a scene, was hopelessly in love with such a bad boy and yells at him and Ali to get out of her company because they don't want them, having such unpleasant people around, and warns the others that if they steal the credit, they know what awaits them. With a serious expression, she asks our protagonist to accompany her for a while. We see that she takes him to a more private place, and when they finally arrive, we see one very embarrassed. Waifumia, or the success, whispers to him that she is scared, but she mentions that he hasn't received the reward he deserved for the great offense he received. She tells him to ask for whatever he wants, and our protagonist was aware that she would be the ideal woman for any man. And he starts to get nervous. Donkey notices this and tells him not to worry, that she will make him forget his ex-girlfriend. Tito 1, who remembers that he was cheated on, gathers courage and asks the president if she is ready to create good memories together. She was obviously going to accept because she was madly in love with him, but when the action started, our protagonist gets nervous because the girl who saved him is watching him, and he apologizes because he still wasn't able to do it. She was aware that he was a shy boy and whispers to him to take a bath while he thinks it over. After a few minutes, our protagonist, while witnessing the landscape, the goddess tells him that in a few minutes everything will return to normal and recommends that he flee. One, who understands nothing, asks who she is, and she says that she is the system administrator of titles named Make, and that she paused several titles to enjoy the skills they bring. For example, the one where he had more than 100 girls attracted to him. In summary, he is handsome by title rank, but he only had it for 3 hours because he is a beginner. If he wants more, he has to pay, and he couldn't miss the chance to be with the president, and like any man would do, he asks how much money it would be to keep using it. But to his bad luck, it is too expensive for just 1 day of use. Seeing that he was sad, she tells him not to worry, that if he doesn't have money, he can go to the lottery and get a free title. Our protagonist ends up trying it, And thanks to that, he gets the title called Master of Mixtahink form, and suddenly he receives a notification where 10,000 yuan were deducted. One is confused by what just happened, but Make tells him to read the fine print. He explodes and tells her that she said it was free. She comments that the draw is free, but the usage costs money. He angrily says he will return it, but she mentions that he can't do that because he must keep it for a minimum of 24 hours, so he should enjoy it. He explodes and says he will never use that lottery again. Make mentions that he can't do that because even if he doesn't use it, he will keep the previous title, and it will always cost money, and he will have to work like a donkey to pay for it. Our protagonist, feeling sad for his tragic fate, is comforted by her saying that if he gets other titles, he will be able to make easy money and won't have to worry about being poor anymore. Suddenly, the waifu comes out of the shower, angry, and asks the protagonist what he is doing there, because he is back to normal and no longer attractive. Ashamed about it, she tells him to get out, and he quickly leaves the place. And as they were leaving the hotel, they run into some guys taking a girl to that place. But she quickly flees from them and asks our protagonist for help. Juan was aware that her drink had been spiked with something weird, and he notices that the guys are approaching, but he uses the legendary technique and shouts, "Police!" And as the guys fall for it, he quickly escapes with the beautiful girl. However, they keep following them anyway. After a few minutes, since he was already tired, he hides in a dumpster. Juan immediately notices that the girl is burning up, and since she couldn't bear the intense heat in her body anymore, she asks our protagonist for help. And when they start getting into action, they end up being found by those guys. The guy is furious because they were going to take his girl. Juan gets nervous because there are too many of them, but she tells him not to be afraid, that he's a man, and besides, he has a title. Juan knows she's right and activates his inner alpha male, and like a madman, he was going to beat these guys up. But then there's the big surprise that they have weapons, and he ends up surrendering. The girl tells him to stay calm and activates her special ability. Well, now he gets filled with courage to crush them, but he forgets that he didn't have a weapon to use. The duo, already fed up and feeling like losers, attack, and Juan knew he had no other option. And even if it cost him his dignity, he takes off his belt and, like a pro, starts beating the guys up. The girl calmly remembers that she needed to take the girl to the hospital to be treated. But while helping her up, suddenly a strange object arrives in a luxury car, and the boss of the guys with a serious expression asks what he's doing to his daughter. Juan knew he had messed up when he saw that his daughter was unconscious and him without pants. The furious bald guy tells his men to put that guy to sleep with the fishes. After a while, Juan tells them to let him go, that he saved his daughter from the ruffians. The man yells at him, asking if it was necessary to be without pants, that if he's a man, he should fight him. Our protagonist knew he had no escape and had to activate the ability of his title, but he loses control and was going to annihilate him. What happened was that they were mocking his self-esteem. Juan is a good person, and thanks to his sincerity, the ability starts working. And the girl's father begins to feel that he misunderstood things and asks him to explain everything that happened. Juan, who is an expert at lying, tells him that he's a martial arts master and swore never to attack innocent people. But since he had no other choice, he had to show his power. He activates his ability, producing a great wave of air in his hands, and throws it at the man to scare him and make him believe it, which he manages to do. The man feels relieved because what he said was true, and apologizes to the protagonist for thinking badly of him and thanks him for saving his daughter. After a few hours, soaking wet, they arrive at the man's mansion. Since he is her daughter's savior, she offered him to stay a few days in her humble home. Obviously, our protagonist ended up accepting. After getting out of that relaxing shower, he thinks about enjoying his luck, but Mengele tells him not to celebrate too soon because in an hour he will lose the title, and the only way to keep using it is to buy it again. However, since he was broke, he had to leave before they found out he was a liar. He starts escaping through the balcony of his room and ends up running into the beautiful waifu and is impressed by the succulent scene. Suddenly, his rope breaks, and just as he is about to fall, the beautiful girl saves him, shouting at him to climb up quickly. After a few seconds, the guards notice someone tried to enter the house and ask the young lady Xiao if she saw anything, but she says no. When they leave, she tells Juan he can come out. He obeys, and Xiao, curious, asks why he was climbing the wall in the middle of the night. With a grudge, he mentions he wanted to see her when she changed clothes. Juan obviously denies it, but Xiao feels grateful to her hero and is willing to show him whatever he wants. She asks his name correctly, not wanting to take advantage of the situation, and asks him to calm down. With nothing more to say, he was about to leave, but Xiao stops him and says if he leaves now, they will end up finding him and asks him to stay a while longer. Inside the room, she tells him not to look at her as if she were so thin because right now she is very hungry. Juan understood what she was saying and repeatedly approaches her very affectionately, whispering that when she is not satisfied, she suffers from insomnia and asks him to accompany her to sleep. But all that was a little joke from her, and she asks if he is not curious to know why those men were chasing her. She explains it was because she went to try a delicious meal at a bar to see if she could cure her rare disease. Juan is shocked because she said a gangster went to eat alone at a bar and also about her disease. She, surprised, tells him that her family is not gangsters. When asked how that is possible since her father wanted to send him to sleep with the fishes, Xiao mentions it was just to scare him, and her father and she are culinary gods who offer delicious dishes to the gods. She, the youngest member, was taught to cook from a young age, but as she grew up, she found out she suffered from a rare disease that prevents her from appreciating the taste of food. Not only that, but she also could not inherit the family's hall of delicacies and would starve because she cannot tolerate the taste of what she eats. Therefore, her family is offering $1 million to whoever can cure her. The protagonist becomes thoughtful because if he manages to get the title of culinary god, he can cure her disease. Meng tells him that to use it would cost 50,000, which makes him think because he has no money. However, he quickly realizes he doesn't necessarily have to cure her through food. There are other ways. He promises the waifu that he will help her. The next morning, we see that our surprising protagonist is sleeping, but wakes up due to receiving an unknown call. When he answers, it turns out to be the president scolding him for not going to work. Juan can't believe what is happening, and it turns out remember that she was the one who took him to that place where she wanted to do something? That's why she's going to apologize when Juan comes to the office. He thought she already held a grudge against him, so without further ado, he mentions that he's going to resign, thinking she might be afraid and furious. Because of this, she says it's better if he comes to work, but he knew there was no escape. We agreed. She started to feel bad for treating him that way. The scene changes with her telling all the guards that the great master is recruiting students and will teach them many techniques and changes. And if 3 sign up, 1 will be free. Thanks scared him. He did it to get money to keep buying titles. Obviously, the guards who saw such skills will sign up. Juan is happy because he's making money, but suddenly their boss arrives and tells them they've forgotten the oath to the god of food they made when they joined his sect. His repentant disciples apologize to him. He says it's no problem and apologizes to our protagonist. He tells him to be calm, and unexpectedly a butler arrives and hands his boss the legendary black credit card. For those who don't know, this card is only held by the richest people in the world. The boss gives it to the protagonist as thanks for saving his daughter. Tito 1 ends up rejecting it because he did it for justice. The bald man understands what he means and thanks him for everything. But in reality, 1 wanted its power but couldn't say yes because he's an honorable person. We see him watching from afar. After a while, we see the protagonist sad because he didn't earn money and has to work outside, having accepted the card. Suddenly, night falls, and they want to beat up the protagonist. 1 knew it was a big problem because he didn't have a belt and couldn't use his power. Men tells him to calm down, saying that since he did an act of justice yesterday, now he can unleash all his power with his fists. And like any respectable tough guy, he was going to teach them a lesson. The scumbags get cocky and quickly charge at him. Juan, who didn't want to fight, starts taking them down one by one. After a few minutes, we see he gave them a severe beating and tells the boss of the guys what he's saying and that he shouldn't disrespect him again, threatening to cut his face. The guy begs him to stop and says a person like him doesn't deserve to tarnish his reputation as a great master. Juan tells him to calm down, saying it was just a joke. The waifu, with a serious expression, tells the guy that they are fools for fighting and asks if they knew they were beaten yesterday, why they came back. She warns him that if he doesn't tell the truth now, she'll throw his men into the river. The little hero says a fan of Chan paid them 50,000 to kidnap her, the daughter of the culinary gods, but he swears he doesn't know the person. She asks him who the hell the guy is. He says Mimi Chan is a streamer who they were infatuated with because of her beauty, and they're in debt from constantly donating to her. Because of that, one day they got a strange job offer from her, and they begged their protagonist to accept her as their disciple. If they did anything else, they would receive any punishment. And as a sign of sincerity, they would give 50,000. Tito knew the gods were on his side and foolishly said he would take her as one of his disciples and make her a being of light. Zia worries and asks if it's not suspicious to take her as their students. One tells her not to worry, that he will watch over them and do all of this to protect her, the waifu, who, hearing these beautiful words, falls deeply in love. She had a very noble name, but that was pure fiction from the protagonist. The scene changes, and we see Mission talking to the blonde guy. She tells him that since he failed the mission, she won't send him any more photos of herself or chat with him. The guy begs her for another chance, saying he will succeed in taking her away, and asks what the problem is with the guy who is with her. The girl, hearing this, tells him not to worry, that she has an idea to turn that guy into her personal slave. The scene changes again, and we see both the protagonist and the waifu waiting for the 24 hours of their title to end. Then one starts researching a title that could help him cure Xiao, and while searching, he comes across a title called Michelin Star, specializing in Western cuisine, and with it, he will be able to captivate people's palates. But it's mentioned that it costs 100,000 a day. Surprised, he asks why it is so expensive. She tells him that because of international recognition, he will be able to gain international skills and become the most famous person in the world. With no other option, he has to buy the Chinese chef title because it is cheaper. The next day, we see our protagonist winning over the hearts of the mansion's kids thanks to being a great cook. While cooking, the aroma reaches Xiao's room, who was asleep. She wakes up to the delicious smell, thinking it was her father cooking, but is greatly surprised that it was our protagonist Wan. Like a true gentleman, he asks her to sit down and enjoy the delicious food he prepared with much love. She blushes because he made that meal especially for her, but Tito, in reality, is thinking about the $1 million he would earn when he cures her illness. The beautiful girl starts tasting the dish that one knew would cure her, but unfortunately, it turns out to be a total failure. Xiao apologizes for eating too quickly, which caused this, but still doesn't feel any taste. One is disheartened because how could it be possible that, even with the Chinese chef title, he couldn't cure her? He tastes his own dish and finds it terrible, but in reality, it is delicious. With a serious expression, he promises to cure her. Xiao is surprised that he is so worried about her, and grateful for everything he has done, ends up giving him a kiss on the cheek. Obviously, everyone is shocked by what just happened, and suddenly, the waifu twists in happiness because she just tasted a delicious lemon touch. One, seeing this, asks what is happening. With a beautiful smile, she declares that she won the $1 million. Our protagonist, shocked by the news and being an honorable man, rejects it, saying he hasn't cured her completely. She tells him that for the first time, she felt a refreshing sweet and sour lemon flavor, and feels that when she is near him, her heart beats a lot and she is sure she is in love with him. Tito 1 doesn't understand anything that is happening right now, but advises her that she is still a student and should not get involved with the jumpster, and as a true gentleman, rejects her confession and recommends that she experience her first love with a SWAT boy. The waifu, who is completely enamored, she begs him to give her a chance, saying she is very mature. Juan was aware that she was partly right about what he did, but as a decent member of society, he refuses and realizes that thanks to the infatuation, he could already perceive some taste and possibly it is a mental problem. He asks her to please tell him how her illness began. She already knew she had a chance because he cared about her, and mentioned that a year ago, when she was preparing a dish for her father to recognize her skills and inherit the clan according to her family's rules, she couldn't manage it no matter how hard she tried. And one day, her sense of taste suddenly disappeared. Juan knew that this was possibly due to stress, and that he only had to help her get rid of it, and it should return to normal. The scene changes to a guy named So Young working at the mansion, but it was all part of his plan to fulfill Mimi's mission, where he receives a video call from her saying that he is the only one she trusts and knows he will complete the mission assigned to him. So Young, who was crazy about her, would fulfill it at any cost. Returning to the story, they are making the legendary pine and dew cake of the gods. When they finally finish, he asks Xiao to taste it. She's extremely impressed because it looks so shiny. She starts to taste it carefully, and after a few seconds she apologizes because she still doesn't appreciate any flavor. Juan tells her not to worry, that he knows what is happening. She is very stressed about not meeting her father's expectations, and that's why she lost her sense of taste. But when they manage to make him proud, it will return to normal. So he teaches her some tricks to make the most delicious cake in the world. After an hour, we see that Juan is sure that this dish is a success. But Xiao is still not confident. Tito Juan, a great guy, tells her not to worry, that if she wants, she can take his cake and pass it off as hers. But anyway, both are the same. She thanks him for that, and we see that she falls more in love because he's so good to her. Suddenly, we find that the boss was tasting the legendary wooden dew cake, and both the protagonist and Xiao are nervous to know what he thinks. Suddenly, her father's shirt bursts open because the dish was so delicious, but without hesitation, they ask if she really made it. Nervous, Xiao mentions that she made it with the help of our protagonist. He says that in reality, the work was hers, that the only thing she lacks is a bit more confidence, and that if he doesn't believe it, he should try her dish. And even if he doesn't notice the taste, he will appreciate the different textures. Xiao takes a bit more courage and ends up trying it. The scene changes to her father thanking her for the scene she prepared. Juan says it's no problem but gets nervous because he was talking about marriage and still doesn't feel secure about joining the Gasters family. But he looks on the bright side that he will have a beautiful wife and be rich, so his life wouldn't be so bad. But suddenly, Mimi refuses to let him do it. Juan tells her that he doesn't care if she is a system and ends up hearing her father congratulating his daughter for getting an incredible partner. Xiao, with an expression, makes her father realize that her beloved is a very good man, and she is sure that with his help. Returning to her family in the most prosperous, her father, recognizing her determination, tells her that now she indeed has what it takes to inherit the Shaoli clan. She says she will meet his expectations. After a while, they are on the balcony and he asks how the dinner was. Xiao, with an expression, says it was delicious, but she is happier to be by his side, and although he rejected her once, she will continue fighting for him to accept because he is the only person she thinks about. Tito 1 is considering the possibility of accepting, but Meng arrives telling him he can't do it, and because of this, our protagonist tells him to shut up. Xiao thought he was telling her and gets sad, but despite that, she asks him to wait, that she will be good enough for him and mature enough to be by his side. Later, we see he was angry with Meng because he lost the opportunity to have a beautiful wife, and asks her if she is in love with him. Meng says no, that there are things more important than love, and tells him the reason. It was because she already had another user and he was similar to him, a person with a good heart, and she turned him into a successful person, but one day suddenly he became dark and wanted to take over the world. And because his ideas weren't the same, he hurt her and took away half of her power. Juan, impacted, asks if he has to fight against this guy. She says yes, and besides, to be careful because he has the title of God. That's why she tells him that it is still too early to fall in love and to become strong quickly to defeat him and recover her power. They switch to a nun who turns out to also be a system and tells her user that it is her mission, that she found out Xiao had the Hall of Delights and to bring her immediately. The scared girl says she will do it. A while later, we see Xiao doing a live stream for all her followers. Her fans, who are in love with her, send her a bunch of gifts and bouquets. Juan was tired of watching that live because his subordinate recommended it to him. Juan asked him to do it because it was part of his mission. In the end, Juan accepts and notices that White is throwing a bunch of money envelopes to all her fans, and he is surprised because it was indeed transferred to his account. And suddenly, he ends up receiving the grand prize where she mentions that whoever wins it will have the pleasure of having a date with her in real life. And we see a jealous protagonist because he won the grand prize and wanted to send him to St. Peter. Well, he thought it was because he was very lucky and noticed that she liked him. This teaches him a lesson. Later, he is aware that the fans of that girl are crazy, and as a genius, he thinks that maybe it would be better to sell the prize and earn some cash. Meng feels that this girl is a possessor of the title system and mentions that her previous user had the ability to grant titles to others, and that possibly this girl works for him. But if so, he could also recover some of his power. Juan understands what she says, and the next day we see that our protagonist was waiting for his date, but was a little disappointed because the internet girls are full of filters and should not be the beauties everyone says. Suddenly he ends up arriving at the waifu's place where she greets him cordially, and the protagonist, who is shocked because she is gorgeous, asks embarrassedly where they are going. A moment later, we see that she is in a restaurant and tells him that the title she has is that of the otaku goddess. And not only that, but she possesses great forms of seduction. However, that doesn't matter, and she ends up giving him the title of Zero Man, which means he can kill the conversation with a single word. So without further ado, the action begins as she starts talking about food, trying to make him fall into her web, but he doesn't react to her provocation. In another instance, she tries to achieve an indirect kiss by asking for a sip of his drink, but due to his title, he doesn't flinch. In another situation, she wants to get close to him affectionately, but it results in a total failure where we see romantic situations created to make the protagonist fall into her provocations and turn him into her personal slave. But to add to this, he remains unfazed. While they were walking, he receives a message saying she had been kidnapped. Like a true alpha male, he immediately goes to save her, and as a genius, he knew her location because he put a GPS on her phone. She mentions that she was possibly captured to refine her title as the goddess of food, but if that happens, she will lose her talent forever, and not only that, but her life will also be in danger. He felt guilty because his father made her the heir because of him, and he quickly went to save her. When he finally arrives, he finds a haunted place, but quickly goes to untie his waifu Xiao because a strange guy is coming. Juan suddenly arrives, and a masked guy with a chainsaw yells that no one will escape today. Juan knew he was in trouble because he couldn't defeat him with his title, but being realistic, he tells him his mission is here. And it turns out the guy turns around because he was a fan of hers. She takes the opportunity to run away with Sharp. While doing so, she ends up tripping and spraining her ankle, making her unable to run anymore. Juan, being the alpha male he is, carries his girl in his arms and tells her not to worry. He will get her out of here safely. And thanks to this, she falls more in love with him. A moment later, we see they are hiding because the guy is nearby. But while doing so, he receives a call from Rubicito, and since they were discovered, he distracts the guy so Xiao isn't taken away. We see how quickly the guy reacts because he wanted to send him to St. Peter, and Xiao couldn't stand her beloved helping her anymore and faces the guy, making him fall. Tito Juan still didn't realize that the guy was a beautiful girl and that her weapon was fake. He watches as both girls argue since it was midnight, and he is about to change his title and pick one that he liked. The girl runs towards him and ends up pushing him, causing him to choose the wrong one, and he ends up with the title of the Master of Conditioning. He doesn't know what he'll do, but we see how he hits the girl with a plant whip, and she is fascinated by it. A moment later, she calms down and apologizes, mentioning that she works making accessories for movies and her weapon wouldn't have hurt him. Juan, being a great guy, tells her he'll let her go this time, but next time he won't be so polite. And we see him finally arriving at my mission. She, jealous, ends up saying that she didn't know he liked playing the hero. One, furious, yells that she is despicable because she invited him on the date to capture Xiao. My mission, who is jealous, tells him that she won't forgive him for being indifferent to her, and that girl, if he were to save her immediately, and more than her subordinate, is surprised because he didn't fall for the master's charm. Xiao heard all that, knows that the protagonist considers her very important. Juan, angry, asks her to leave her alone and will do whatever she wants. My villain leaves her alone, but if that girl can be her in a streaming duel, but if she wins, she must give her to him. He tells her to be careful because it could be a trap. Juana says it doesn't matter, and asks Xiao if she is willing to accept the challenge. She knew she couldn't face him and ends up accepting, even though she has never done a live stream. My villain gets furious because she is a novice and dares to underestimate her, and says that in 3 days the competition will be held, and we see her leave with her subordinates. Xiao gets nervous because she has millions of followers and she is a simple novice. Juan tells her not to worry because he will help her. The waifu calms you down because she heard those words. As night falls, we see Juan a bit nervous because he accepted the challenge without thinking and now investigates my mission, and she is very famous. One remembers that Shaba is the one who will compete and asks Men if she wins, she can recover her power. Men says yes, as long as she uses her stamp. Suddenly, they get confused when we talk about recovering the power. It would be Mung's because her user took away half of her super, and he gave some powers to other people. So when the protagonist defeats them, he will be able to recover Mung's previous power. And suddenly there's a knock on the protagonist's door and he goes to open it. It turns out it was Shaba, where she mentions if she can come in because she hasn't been able to sleep. He says, of course. Xiao mentions that on the day of the live stream, she can prepare food or play an instrument or sing if she can. She says not to tell her that if she wants to win, she must do it on the goddess Otaku's own turf. Xiao mentions that she knows classical music and dances, but one says that won't work, and if she wants to win, she has to do those dances like my mission does. Xiao didn't feel confident in dressing like that. One who heard that pulls out his title of Golden Producer, where he promises to turn her into the new goddess Otaku. The next day, our protagonist started first of all by making her put on makeup, also making her practice kawaii dances, and with everything ready, they prepared for the encounter tomorrow. Xiao, who knew her beloved was working hard, prepared a delicious dinner and milk for him so that when he finished, she would help him by giving him a massage in the shower. Later, we see them enjoying the good life. She thanks him because his training gave her a bit more confidence, but she's still a bit nervous. However, he tells her not to be afraid and to do her best, reassuring her that he will always help her. She starts to feel calm because she knows he will always protect her. Finally, the day of the meeting arrives, consisting of 3 rounds with Mamba girls. They present themselves and one of them puts on a show for all their fans. The penalty for losing a round is to rip off a strap from their shirts. She knows it's going to be tough because the first round will be in her territory, but if she wins, she'll have an advantage. So she invests all her money in that victory. The first round is played and she loses in her territory. She also loses the second round, and the last round, called the King of Connections, is activated. She manages to make Shadow, hundreds of celebrities, see her, and she's about to win the final encounter. Our protagonist congratulates her because she's very skilled, but the villain doesn't allow that to happen. He activates his trump card, noticing that she's recovering quickly and doesn't understand why. It turns out Mimi-chan had connections with the platform and was manipulating the encounter. Xiao, worried, asks why she doesn't use her money to bring more people. Juan tells her it's not necessary because even if they do, he has contacts with the platform. Xiao sadly tells him they'll lose anyway because they weren't expecting that. Luckily, a girl who is watching the Wayfist detects that my mission is using a title, and she, who can't stand cheating, supports Xiao and starts donating a lot of money, causing the platform to start drowning. A lot of money, causing the platform to start choking. Mimi-chan knew she was going to lose and asked her friends for help, but they told her they couldn't do anything because the server was paralyzed. One was shocked by what was happening, and we see that she wins. Now in the meeting, Xiao and they were happy because they were able to get back the title of the otaku goddess. Later, our protagonist wonders who the person who helped them was. She tells him it doesn't matter, and to help her recover some of her power, she assigns him a secondary mission that consists of buying a $50 million car, and if he does, she will grant a title to whoever he wants. The next day, he felt very grateful to Xiao for helping him and decided to buy her a car. Xiao gets very happy with the news, and we see that one was choosing a car, but no staff attended to them, and he was aware that the workers thought he was poor. He asks someone to help him, but a guy yells that this car costs $50 million and asks if he can really afford it. Juan knew it was the right car to complete the mission and thinks about buying it. The guy, furious because he was touching it, tells him that only VIP people with a lot of money can buy that car, not a poor guy like him. Suddenly, a cute saleswoman named Vivian arrives and asks if she can help him and starts showing him all the cars. Tito 1, being the millionaire he is, says he's going to buy 2 of the most expensive models they have. The girl gets very happy because she was a rookie and was going to earn a big commission. The guy is shocked to see that he actually bought the most expensive car. After a while, we see that they are in the mall, and Xiao is fascinated by a beautiful bag she saw. Seeing that, he gets annoyed because she is very silly. He tells her to be grateful because he helped her recover her power, and to keep in mind that he is not exclusively for her, which makes her angry at what Tito 1 said. He quickly tells the receptionist that he will buy everything the cute girl touches, and we see our protagonist start buying a bunch of stuff for his beautiful waifu because now he is rich. In the next scene, we see that they are in the car, and Xiao tells him that she had a lot of fun today and thanks him for everything. The protagonist tells her not to worry about it, and while driving, he has to stop the car immediately because they are about to run over someone, and it turns out it was the girl from the other day, named Ming. Furious, she yells that Mimi-chan self-destructed because of him and will take revenge for it. Everyone is shocked by the news. He asks if she is sure. She says obviously because she found injections and pills in her room. Juan is sure she didn't do it and asked to be taken to her house. Later, we see that our protagonist deciphers that everything in the room were beauty products, and what actually happened was that she was kidnapped. He knew all of this because he used his genius detective title. Then we see that indeed they captured Mimi-chan, and the culprit was the one who granted her power named Uriel, because she wanted to take back the power she gave. But she gets a big surprise that she no longer had it and furiously calls, where he yells at her that by donating a large sum of money to that girl, they stole the power from his user, where he mentions nothing at all. He tells her and tries to get it into her head that he is no longer a lapdog of God, and he ends up hanging up on her. We see that she is very interested in what other secrets Wang has. As the protagonist is returning, we see that he is heading to where they have Minnie-chan. When they finally arrive, they separate to find her quickly. Meanwhile, we see that she is completely tied up, and in that state, she ends up fainting. They show us some flashbacks where we see that she was singing to some children in an orphanage because she was also an orphan. The children tell her that she sings very beautifully, and one day a producer from an entertainment company suddenly arrived and offered her a job. Minnie-chan obviously accepted to help the children there, although they did not want her to leave, but she promised them that she would become very famous and would always visit them. In the end, she wakes up from the dream, and the first thing she sees is the silhouette of our protagonist. He unties her and tells her that he will get her out of there. She, who had been mentally affected for years, tells him that she is a loser. The protagonist tells her not to say that because she has many fans. The waifu tells him that this is false, and that the reason they followed her was because of her power, and she does not have a single true fan. She thought this way because when she signed her contract, her performance was terrible, and her manager treated her badly because she generated debts. She went to get surgery but ended up meeting Uriel, who said she could make her famous. but in exchange, she had to give her 90% of the earnings she made. The waifu, desperate, ended up accepting, and soon she stopped visiting the children at the orphanage because she did not want them to think badly of her because of the type of content she made, and that is why she thinks she is worth nothing without her power. Upon hearing this, he asks if she knows who God Nihian is. She says no, but knows that Uriel and 7 other angels work for him. Tito 1 could not believe what he heard, but knew it was not the time to worry. As Tony continued, he started to cheer her up, telling her that a very beautiful and talented girl arrived without needing that power. Mimi-chan tells him not to lie because during the date they had, he did not even look at her. But if what he says is true, then he should give her a kiss. Juan gets extremely nervous because she is getting closer and about to do it. Ming appears, launching a flying kick and worriedly asks Mimi-chan if she is okay. She, in a terrible state, says that how is it possible that she remembers her without her power? Ming tells her that she will never forget her because she is the angel who saved the orphanage. She thought that because her parents left that orphanage to her, but she ran away. And one day when she returned, she heard her sing, and the children were very happy around her. She is very grateful to her for protecting them in her place. And thanks to her, she was filled with courage and has been taking care of them. Minnie-chan, who noticed she was crying, reassures her and thanks her also for now taking care of them. And we see how both girls embrace and cry together. Upon seeing such a moving scene, he decides that he will give her back the title of the otaku goddess where everyone, by her words, in arms. With a girl named Liang who is also an angel of God, and she is telling Ariel that not only has she lost the title of the god of food, but she also lost the title of the otaku goddess. She asks if she doesn't fear the wrath of her lord Uriel, and she replies not to worry, that she has already found a clue about the culprit, and will definitely catch him and hand him over to her master to be forgiven. And although she has a serious expression, she mentions that the master ordered them the task of repairing the title of the Emperor of the Entertainment Circle. So she warns her that if she messes up again, she will not let her lord scold her because of her fault. Returning to Xiao, we see that he is preparing breakfast for everyone. But while he was doing so, he is looking for something in a drawer and accidentally bumps into the protagonist, who is fascinated by the landscape. As Mimi enters, she shouts to Xiao that she is very flirtatious today. She says it was an accident, and suddenly a lot of objects start falling. He quickly goes to help her, and we see that he successfully does so. Mimi then tells Xiao that she did all that on purpose, and not wanting to lose, she affectionately and tearfully tells the protagonist to forget what happened last night. Showing a flashback where he returned her power, but didn't know what to do with her. She tells him not to worry, that she will return to her house, but he says no because it could be dangerous. Xiao wasn't going to allow his beloved to be near her, so he offers that she stays in his mansion. Returning to the present, we see that Xiao prepared a wonderful breakfast. The protagonist, seeing this, was patiently waiting for his, but ends up getting only a salad. Furious about this, she asks Swan to give her some of his, and being a great guy, he obviously feeds his beautiful waifu. We see that she was fascinated because it was very delicious. Xiao, seeing this, dies of jealousy. Meanwhile, we see that she received a call from her manager, who starts treating her very badly because she wasn't working these days. Juan, hearing all this like an alpha male, takes her phone and tells the jerk that from now on she will no longer work for the company and will not allow her to be disrespected because she is his. Hearing these words, she becomes very happy, and he tells her not to worry, that he will take care of it. She blushes and thanks him for helping her. When they finally finish eating, he tells her to get ready because they will go to house entertainment and teach that guy a lesson for everything he did to her. Changing the scene, we see that Mimi-chan returned to the company and her boss immediately starts treating her very badly and furiously asks where her boyfriend who defended her earlier is, that now he wants him to face him. She tells him that he will be back soon because he is buying the company right now. The jerk, in shock, mentions a price of 5 million. Juan enters the office and says he has a little extra money. The guy asks who he is, and the protagonist mentions that he is the new boss, but to recognize him better, he is Mimi-chan's partner. She, with tearful eyes, tells him to stop intimidating her. Tito Juan wasn't going to tolerate that, so he asks him to sign his resignation letter and leave. The guy, acting tough, asks if he will get severance pay for working so many years at the company. The protagonist says that if 500,000 will be enough. Baby Shan takes advantage of the situation and says yes, he wants the money he has to lick her feet. The guy obviously does it because he wanted the cash. He's a ruthless guy, the bad things he did for so many years, and he should owe more than 1 million. And she asks if he still feels like asking for the money. The guy begs her to forgive him. After a while, we see that she gave him a beating, and both he and Michael were leaving the company very close together, and she thanks him because he's very good to her. The protagonist tells her not to worry after a while. We see that Mung mentions that it was a good idea to buy Java Entertainment because its previous owner is the only important title he doesn't yet have, but if he becomes the owner of the Emperor of the Entertainment Circle title, he'll take the opportunity to take over the world. Tito War. Surprise tells him that no matter how much it costs, he will buy it right now, because if he did, he would meet beautiful actresses. Meng tells him that it has no price, that it's broken, and the only way to get it is by repairing it through missions, so he asks him to work hard to get it. Suddenly, a girl calls our protagonist from a car. It's the president named Don, where she asks him to get in. He was surprised by what's happening, and without hesitation, she had already told him that he quit. She tells him not to worry, that she won't take him to a room like last time and just wants to talk business with him. And also, if he doesn't want to know who donated that large amount of money the other day, one can tuck. Because of that, and he is sure that she is responsible for it. Changing scenes. We see our protagonist in relaxing hot springs. Obviously, he ended up accepting Don's proposal, and he's there because of this. And we see that suddenly she arrives. Tito 1, who is fascinated by such beauty and embarrassed by it, asks her what she wants to talk about and also why she chose this place, where she mentions that she chose it because it's a place where they can talk more sincerely. Both one tells her that it wasn't necessary, that he is a sincere man because he paid so much money. She tells him that if a woman is spending so much money on a man, it's because she is interested, and if he feels guilty because she gave him so much, he can repay her with what we already know. And if he likes, she can give him more or a little more fun. Our protagonist couldn't believe it because he no longer had the title of being a heartthrob. He quickly tells her to be careful because he feels that she has the power of God, but still not. It is assured because there are no subtitles, but you can feel the smell of the enemy. Dong, with a serious expression, tells him that despite having a beautiful lady in front of him, he is talking to another woman at that very moment, perplexed by what he said, and wonders if she knows of the existence he couldn't take anymore so much. Theater tells him that he already knows he has the system of titles and is in danger, and if he doesn't believe him, she is the only one who can help him. Our protagonist already knew he was screwed, must have already been discovered. Menglarita, that indeed it is of the street god, and to send her to St. Peter immediately. Dao tells him not to worry, that she is no longer his enemy, and mentions that they saw that he took the title of the otaku goddess and entered very little. Uriel will catch him, who is the woman with the largest beauty company in the country, Ilium, the queen of the largest entertainment group in China, where her lord ordered her to obtain the title of the emperor and the entertainment circle, and for that they must recover the title of Michelle again. And when they do, they will send him to St. Peter and Juan, who heard that knew it was a total F, and asks her why she will help him, knowing that she will get into trouble. Double mentions that if the system itself abandoned God, it must be because he is a malevolent person, and she is not going to let someone like that run the world as he pleases. That's why she will help him defeat him. Reddy understands what I did, but how do you plan to defeat them, and they outnumber and overpower you? She mentions that the only thing that can defeat God is him, because he has the system, and the only thing she can do for him is to keep him on track to the final confrontation. But she has a small condition to help him that consists in him being her man, and if he obeys her, she will reward him. Tito 1 felt tempted by such a good offer, but as every self-respecting alpha male ends up rejecting it because he could protect himself, and also because he still doesn't trust her. Don yells at him if he's crazy, that our protagonist tells her that he has a system, and he will manage to survive. She recognizes his bravery, and understands why the system chose him. Returning to the house of our protagonist, we see that the beautiful Wafis had some cute bunny outfits. Quan, shocked, asks why they are dressed like that. To see Gonzalez mentions that my vision told her that he left with a beautiful girl in a car, and she was worried about that. And they decided that they couldn't let him be taken away, so they wanted to give him a surprise, tells them to calm down because she is his ex-boss. Immediately, we see the waifu very happy about the news. Suddenly, one gets a message, and it turns out to be Vivian, the girl who sold him the car where she would ask him to add her as a friend. Aaron to understand is that the protagonist, through some action he takes, can strengthen the title, and thus improve its level. And when he has some leveled up, he will be able to obtain another. The next day, we see that our protagonist attended a party where they were presenting the latest car flights from the dealership. It is a good opportunity to make connections with some big shots and improve the title of the King of Connections. And while chatting, suddenly notices that some toys are walking Vivian. That's because they bought a car, and their money was blocked or disappeared. And they are angry about that because she was the one who invited them, and she must be the culprit that their money is no longer there. He already wants Innocent, starts crying, and tells them that she didn't invite any of them, Tito. That couldn't allow seeing a lady in danger, and as Tom passes by, he defends her and tells the guys to listen to the explanation of the beautiful lady. They, furious, tell him to shut up because being her accomplice, they were going to call the police to take him away. He calmly asks them if she were the culprit, she would be an expert at lying. But as they can see, this girl is very shy, and someone else must have set it all up, and that he would pay them all the money himself. He gives them his business card as a show of sincerity, which improves the title of the King of Connections, and they congratulate him because he is very skilled. Guadalupe shows the guys the number that destroyed them, and tells them that the girl on the cover is an edited image and was going to make a call to appear guilty among them. Indeed, they end up finding it, and it turns out it was the guy from last time. The furious guys beat him up for stealing from them, and they thank Tom for helping. He says it's okay, that he'd better show them some cars, and when they finally arrive, Waifu wants all the cars in the place. The public is shocked by such a big purchase. The guys understand that she had nothing to do with the theft and know that Tom is a great guy. As night falls, the sellers apologize to a guy named Xiao because a rich guy bought all the cars and took the one he wanted. We see the guy furious because they took his precious car. The next morning, we see the secretary, who we'll call Anne, angry because Tom hasn't come to work and there's a lot of work to do. He apologizes and asks if she can handle those tasks and also devise a plan to create a car rental business because he bought many. She, being a hard-working waifu, ends up accepting. Tom thinks that Anne is a genius in the business world, so he needs to keep her busy with big projects so she doesn't get bored and quit, thus making her his right hand. While they're chatting, they notice a guy demanding the guards let him in because he needed to see the president because his friend knew him. They tell him to leave. Xiao introduces himself and says he respects him a lot, but it's a big mistake to mess with the car of his dreams. After a while, we see them chatting, and Xiao tells him he'll pay double or triple if he agrees to give him his precious car. Our protagonist, now a magnate, refuses to sell it because he's not short on cash. Xiao tells him to think carefully because he belongs to a family that has the biggest luxury car rental business and cooperation with famous hotels and industries, asking how he can compete against him. Tom, unfazed, makes a call to a famous hotel and tells them he has a very tempting offer, as long as they agree to do business with him, and they end up accepting. Xiao gets very nervous because his contracts are about to expire, and now this guy is offering better deals, and they would lose a lot of money. Anne congratulates the protagonist because from the beginning he had already developed a plan to become richer and more famous. Xiao, furious, says he can't change his mind and, as a last resort, begs him not to be so mean, that not only did he steal his precious car, but also wants to steal his job. Realizing Tom isn't that bad, he tells him he has an offer where the idea of improving the title of gold producer occurred to him, and mentions that he will consider being his friend, and will give him the car he wants if he helps him produce a car movie. Jia obviously ends up accepting and reads, and that from now on he was his brother, and will help him with anything. After a while in the forest, they are on Gran Via at a little party organized by Chao for our protagonist, and while suddenly Don Xiaomi ends up arriving. He asks his brother if he knows such a beauty. She says yes, she is following him. Later we see that they were talking, and she asks him if he is willing to support his brother in a car movie. She obviously ends up accepting. Wall says to remember that she rejected him last time. Don says he knows very well but did not say to stop pursuing him, and without hesitation mentions that he will wait for him in the room to have a chat about the movie script. She ends up leaving the place. Xiao surprisedly says to his buddy that for nothing is he number one because he has a beauty chasing him and gives him some protection for when they have fun. And suddenly a bunch of girls end up inviting Tito Xiao out. Juan, who saw he was busy, tells him to go to the bathroom and while leaving, shows him a trick to start distinguishing people with great talent to help him in the future, and ends up activating the King of Connections, where it allows the user to identify people by their actions and how all the people had rings on their heads. He mentions that the white ones are common people, the red ones are people with talent, the gold ones are people with fortune, and the black ones are people with bad luck. But he must pay a lot of attention to the rainbow rings because those people in the future will become powerful and can help them. And suddenly, a girl ends up bumping into the protagonist, and it turns out she had a rainbow ring. She asks if he is okay. She says no. She is very dizzy from drinking too much. Men says he is a very lucky guy because he ran into one. The Brazilian girl asks if he can take her to her room to rest. The scene changes. We see that the girl had our protagonist a little busy because she wouldn't let him leave until he had fun with her for a while. Tito 1 didn't know whether to take this heaven-sent opportunity because he was going to lose his purity, but it was the next thing he had to face with all he had to maintain his purity. Data. But unfortunately for him, the president arrives and sees him in this little situation. She, furious, the girl named Juan, who is shameless for taking her man because her friend, I didn't expect that, tells her that it's not true, that she accepted to go with her to the room of her own free will. The protagonist doesn't believe that these are pure lies. Doki couldn't stand that and yells at them to shut up, and we see how the two beauties start to fight. I dedicated myself, amazed by what is happening, telling him to be serious and better help. And suddenly everyone notices that the TV had turned on, and with a serious expression tells them that they are in the punishment room, and to get out of there, they must complete the challenge assigned by the king. It turns out that Xiao quickly asks everyone if there's anyone in the room they like, and we see how the beautiful Waveful raises her hand, embarrassed, asking him to stop that. Xiao doesn't pay attention and explains or Patrina that they like, and now they make the other, where we see that without fear they end up giving a good dose of kissing, where we've seen that they get furious because that girl is taking her beloved away. The audience watching everything is in shock, because what is happening is that Shivani is in love with her friend, and not the protagonist. Returning to see that he is full of kisses all over, and Joan thanks him for his hospitality, and tells him that she fell in love with his simple heart, and will not allow any man to take advantage of her.